And welcome back to yet another community watch party for a Pantheon developer stream. You guys know the drill on these. Last night, Visionary Realms did a Twitch stream of Parting the Veil, which is a series where they go in depth on the design of certain systems in Pantheon. Last night was about the mastery system, something that we have heard a pretty decent amount about in the past, but then it kind of like drifted off to the side for a little while, and now we're bringing it back into the spotlight. As usual, as you guys know, I have not watched this video yet, so we're gonna just have a nice little chill time here this afternoon, watching through it together, whether or not you have seen it already. I'm glad you're here. And yeah, we're just going to kind of discuss it as we go. We don't play Pantheon Bingo for these particular watch parties. It's more of a deep dive into a particular topic. And this should be one that's pretty interesting to talk about. There's quite a bit to the mastery system. We'll see maybe how things have changed since the 2020, 2021 era, where this last time it was really talked about in any serious amount of depth. So yeah, should be interesting. And I just, like I said, I'm actually, it's the end of the week. I'm kind of tired, to be honest. And it'll be nice to just kind of let's just chill out and let's just see what they have to say. How's everybody? How are you guys doing? How are you guys doing? Are you as tired as I am? How's Friday treating you? We did make it. Tyanu says, okay, that's the moment where we have a 30-minute introduction, right? Gonna go grab something to drink. We could. You never know. I like to keep you guys guessing, though. Sometimes we just hang out and chat for 30 minutes in the pre-show, but it's like, I don't like to be too predictable, though. We could just jump in right now. Don't make me do it. I will hit the button and we will just start watching the video right now. No questions asked. I'm a wild man. Don't even tempt me. Sleepy Frog, are you as sleepy as I am? So you're doing better now. Thanks for being here, Baz. Thank me for being here. Thank you for being here. I'm glad we could get together here and just hang out. Ready for the weekend? Yeah. Ooh, Bolthar says dealing with hardcore allergies the last 2 weeks and feeling some relief for the first time. Glad to hear that. Allergies can suck, especially this time of year. All the stuff's coming back to life. Tyanu's Friday gave you a migraine, not the best Friday. Ooh, sorry to hear that. I know migraines are not fun at all. Thorndeep says, I like our sit-down chats. Me too. Me too. This is just like fireside chat time. It's just chill, just some like stimulating intellectual discussion about MMO game design. It's like, heck yeah. Mordred says, good evening all. Is it evening where you are? It's not quite evening where I am quite yet, but we're getting there. The sun is staying out later and later these days, so I'm not ready to accept that it's evening. Bolthar says, how do you feel about the pre-office stream in reflection? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Wow, that must be how tired I am because I completely forgot. I was going to bring that up. Thank you for bringing that up. For those of you who don't know, last week, and not even a week ago, last Saturday, I had the awesome opportunity to finally stream some pre-alpha footage live on Twitch, my gameplay in Pantheon. And not only that, but also do it with some very excellent people, like some other Pantheon community streamers, including CoCarnage himself, which was awesome. And today, Friday, as of the recording of this, I will be dropping a highlight video on my YouTube channel. So you ask how I feel about it. Well, that video is going to be a a good way to get a feel for that, because put all of my favorite moments all in one video. Because I know too that you know, we played for like about an hour and a half. We did that like kind of like a debriefing, like Q&A immediately afterwards. But the gameplay itself was about an hour and a half. But I know even still, you know, things happen. Some people maybe don't want to dedicate a whole hour and a half to watching the entire thing. So if you just want to kind of get the condensed version and get the stuff that you really should know, or the stuff that you really don't want to miss, then that is what that highlight video is for. So it should be fun. But like, how do I feel about it in reflection? Like honestly, not a whole lot different than I did immediately after. It's like it was a lot of fun. I feel very grateful to have had that opportunity. You know, not many people can say that they've been able to do that, to stream Pantheon, even just playing. I mean, let's be honest, even just playing Pantheon in pre-alpha, that in and of itself is a pretty rare opportunity, and then being able to stream it is even rare on top of that, and being able to stream it with Code Carnage is even rare on top of that. So, yeah, very fortunate. Hope that we can do more things like that in the future. I think the fact that Code just kind of put that idea out on his own is a good sign that there will be more of those sorts of streams in the future. So, so yeah, you know, he came out and said even maybe next month. I mean, this isn't confirmed. It's not official until we get VR approval. But like I said, the fact that Code just was like, hey, maybe next month, like, let's get into like a dungeon. It's like, all right, like that's saying something, you know? And that seems like he had enjoyed himself enough to want to do it again. Like that's pretty darn cool if you ask me. So yeah, that was good times. And I think it would I think it'd be really beneficial, really, for everybody, like, to get more into kind of like a regular routine almost of showing Pantheon gameplay in pre-alpha. It's and doing that as like a stream team, you know, having like a recurring cast of characters that jump in on, you know, a predictable basis to show Pantheon in pre-alpha, how it actually is, and so to try to at least give a better like inside look at how things are actually going. That's honestly, being able to do that, being able to stream Pantheon like regularly with the guys like from Pantheon Plus and Nathan Napalm and like Co and stuff, like being able to do that regularly honestly is like a dream of mine that I've had for a while. Like it just seems like so fun when you know you can over time like develop not only like the friendships, which we have, you know, been friends for quite a while now, but doing in that sort of format, you know, you start developing your own kind of like inside jokes that, you know, everybody watching is kind of in on as well too. And so it's like, I just think that would be really, really fun. And I think that would just be, I think that would be a major win and a good sign that the devs feel like the game is actually at that point, you know, that they're starting to open up the streamer program, and, you know, they're confident that the game is finally at a point where it's suitable for that sort of thing. You know, there's always kind of that two-edged sword where, you know, sometimes showing a lot of footage can, to some people, make it seem like things are just moving at a snail's pace, even if they are like, you know, ramping up, which the devs seem to be, but it can if you're watching it too closely and you don't have really kind of like the proper framework for that, it can make it seem like, oh, like I've been watching these streams like month after month, and it seems like only very minor things are changing. You know, that there can be some kind of like negative feelings associated with that compared to like if you if the devs were to, let's say, just go completely dark for like 6 months, 6, 8, 9 months, and have show like essentially nothing in that time, and then they come back out and it's like seemingly huge strides were made in that time, you know? And then that can be exciting to some people, but everybody's different, there's kind of like pros and cons to each. But that's always just been kind of the struggle of a crowdfunded development like this, where there's kind of a constant pressure to show what is happening. But what do you show? How much do you show? There's really not a right answer to that. There really isn't. And people just instinctually will try to and have always, tried to judge progress based on the little, 30, 60-minute dev streams that they do, that they're, showing some certain thing that they're working on. But still, it's like those have always just been like little snapshots, here and there. It's really not enough context to really give people an accurate idea of how things are actually going. And that it has been kind of put me and other pre-alpha testers in kind of like this weird position at times, where it's like the progress that is being shown in like the dev streams and stuff doesn't like always 100% line up with what we know is actually being done in the game in pre-alpha, which is under NDA. For the longest time, it's been under pretty strict NDA, and so it's it's been pretty limited, like what you can show and talk about. So I think overall, though, it will definitely be a net benefit as gradually the NDA starts to get kind of lifted. Right now for select streamers, and then as time goes on, more and more streamers will be brought into that. More actual gameplay will be available online, and then ultimately, I think the expectation is that come alpha, the NDA, at that point, it's like should be pretty much lifted, and then it's a free for all as far as showing things and talking about things. So, it will be very interesting and in some ways relieving to finally get to that point where there isn't such a disparity between the amount of information that people have in the Pantheon community and the amount of information that pre-alpha testers are working with compared to somebody who is completely unpledged and only maybe has like newsletters and the occasional dev stream and stuff to try to like gauge the amount of progress that the project is making. I have, often talked about like how in the past the quote unquote information economy in the Pantheon community has been just way out of whack. You get completely different narratives depending on who you're talking to and what information they have available to them. So, and it's caused a lot of kind of division, to be honest, in the community, because everybody's working with different perspectives of the same project, and it looks very different depending on what angle you're coming at it from. So, I think it will overall, I think, be very healthy for everyone, for the viewers, for the streamers, and for the devs, to be able to start gradually lifting that. You know what I mean? So that's a long answer. Terra Skull says the stream lacked necromancers. I agree. Necros would be awesome. Bards would be awesomer though, I will say. Actually, there's a lot of other classes that need to get in the game. I know Nate is dying to be playing his paladin. I think that's toward the top of the list. There does need to be more classes in there. Different combinations, different group synergies and stuff like that. That will really, I think, make the streams even more fun to watch and to play. Sleeper Frog says, yeah, he wanted to run a dungeon with you guys. I'm pretty confident that we'll make that happen. And I don't know if it will be in the May session. But we'll get that done at some point. Like Dez, I think in the stream had talked about going to the Goblin Caves, which I think would be great. I know a lot of people who've been like following. If you do follow the dev streams and stuff, you've seen the Goblin Caves before, so it might not be completely new. But doing it with Co and with other pre-alpha players, that alone changes it. Code mentioned like, oh, maybe we can get like an instance, and I'm just like, no, that's not the same. Like playing Pantheon, if we had our own instance for the sake of demoing a stream, it's like at that point you're not even playing Pantheon anymore though. Pantheon is an open world game. You're interacting with other people, and that's just really part of the fun. It's part of what makes it interesting. You never really know what other people are going to do. You never know like what parts of the dungeon are going to be up for grabs, and you kind of just got to improv it. Like you could see in the stream that we did, there were some areas that we went to that were just populated because there's hundreds of other pre-alpha testers, and we can't predict or control what they're going to be doing. So you kind of just got to roll with it. But that is the game. That's the reality of the game, and I think that's worth showing. So, yeah, getting into the Goblin Caves on a live pre-alpha server with Co and running through it, I think would be really good to show, especially for Co's viewers who maybe never seen that area before, but even for people who maybe have seen it before. We're a different group. We're gonna have our own different take on it, our own different like approach and strategies to the combat, because the combat in the Goblin Caves is pretty legit. That would definitely be a lot of fun. Also, no one died to a bear, so is it really even a stream? Good point. We'll have to keep that in mind for the future. The bears, let's see, we were like level 14, right? 13, 14, so I don't think there are really any bears at that level. Not in that area, anyway. All the bears are like lower level than that. They would have been a piece of cake even if we had found them. Ionica says the stream was great, especially the exploration part, but Coast chat was quite brutal to stay polite. I mean, it was just Coast chat. The YouTube comments too. It's like it's everywhere, and it's completely expected. It's completely predictable, because Pantheon's visuals are not where they need to be, and for the vast majority of people, the way their brain works, they just get hung up on visuals and they get stuck there and they can't see past it. It's like a roadblock for some people that is like they can't even analyze the gameplay because they're too busy trying to analyze the models and the animations and textures and lighting and things like that, the superficial thing. And if they spend so much time analyzing that the rest of it is just obsolete. And that will be the case until they get new like character models in and things like that, and with the new animations. That I'm confident that is what's people are getting hung up on, and not knowing that they're gonna those things are going to be replaced, and they can't be replaced soon enough. If you ask me, I think that will be very much looking forward to that day. But yeah, like you said, both are. It's the old character models, but the environments, yeah, it's like that was. I'm glad. It wasn't really like it wasn't our plan because, like I said, we kind of had to like improv it. With Drac coming out, it's like, hey, let's find the dragon. That was completely improv, and so that that's how we kind of ended up high in the mountains of Throne Fast. But honestly, I'm kind of glad. I'm glad that we didn't actually find the dragon, because I think it's funnier just to have that as a tease. And I'm glad that we instead ended up just way even higher in the mountains. Which, by the way, I will say, after that stream, I did go and like find the dragon because I was curious personally. But we were even way higher up than that. But I'm glad that that we ended it there because you had that just epic vista looking out across the zone, and and seeing how big that zone is, and by extension, how big the continent will be and the world will be. I mean, that's just the newbie area of the human race. And it was massive. You saw how long it took to travel and how many little like nooks and crannies there are along the way. So yeah, I thought that was, we literally ended it on a high note. Bolthar says Ko got a number of tough questions from his chat. Honestly, it's like a lot of the tough questions are fair. Like, again, like that should be expected, and just because of the nature of the project, you can't have an MMO that's in the development for this long and there not be questions. Like, I personally, I think those questions should be welcomed as long as they're in, question in good faith, and not just being just straight up ridiculous. Like, even entertaining the thought that Pantheon actually looks anything like a game from 2001 or anything like that. It's like that argument has no base. Like Pantheon's, like I said, character models, animations, they don't look good. But if you take Pantheon as a whole, like you take that stream, so this looks just like a game from 2001 or something. It's like you don't actually know. Either you're not being serious and that's not actually like a real statement that should just be ignored, or you just are completely forgetting what games from 2001 actually looked like. Either way, it's ridiculous. But asking, questions about, like, why is this game still in pre-alpha after all these years? Like, those are very legitimate questions that there should be serious conversations about that, right? Because Pantheon's development is absolutely wild, and that is what keeps me coming back. That's why it's so awesome. It's because it's so unconventional, and they're trying to do something that really nobody else has done. Like, this ain't your mama's MMO development. It is storied and unique, and that requires explanation. That's why I've gone to such great lengths to like make videos and stuff, trying to dive in and answer some of those questions and explain the process, because it is completely crazy. And I don't blame people at all for being confused by it, to be honest. That's just what it is. Bolthar says, I've never noticed, but Baz's hands look huge. Is it just the camera angle? Maybe? I have pretty big hands. I mean, what is the, how's a way, what's a way that I can like accurately give you like a sense of scale? Okay, this is a Sharpie. Okay. Sharpie for scale. You got that? That's how big my hands are. I got pretty big hands. Gamer hands, you know. I need to be able to reach like all the way across my keyboard. You know? Between two hands, I pretty much got it. Pretty much got it covered. Does that help? Oh, what's up, Minus? You thought I was in PJs? PJ Club, like I said when I was playing a monk. Just in PJs all the time. No, this is flannel is just it's just everyday wear in the Northeast. Every day is flannel day. Bolther says, so there was a dragon divulge. I don't know if I can at this point. Stream's off. I think I'm just going to leave it a mystery. I think it's better kept as a mystery for another day. I'm just getting caught up on chat. You guys are chatty here today. And this is, let's see. Okay, did you do it? Yeah, come on, guys. It's been half an hour and we still haven't even started the video yet. You did it again. Who was it? Who asked that question? You got me talking about the stream. That's what it was. Was that you, Bolthar? Yeah, I think, yeah. How do I feel about pre-alpha stream? You tricky devil. You did it. You got me off on a rabbit trail. Yeah, it was you. It was you, Tyanu, too. I know. You... Bolthar, it was an alley-oop. Bolthar threw it up into the air and you came slamming down with it. Sleepy Frog says, push the button. All right, if you're going to make me. Oh, that's the wrong button. Wrong watch party. We're not going to play. Whoops. We're not playing bingo today. It's a different layout. There we go. That's better. I pushed the wrong button. You made me nervous. All right, let's get into it. I've had enough of it. Of talking to you people and answering your questions. Thorndeep says we have bets on who can get you off topic. Oh, is that what's going on behind the scenes? Not even aware you guys have like prop bets going in some like Discord channel. Have you made your own bingo card? Meta bingo? Bingo for Baz streams? All right, parting the veil. I gotta unmute that. The mastery system. All right, let's see what they got. Jintaki, now share your shoe size. 10.5. That's it. That's the last question.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the April 2023 edition of Parting the Veil. Tonight we're going to be talking about mastery. This is one I think we've been really excited to talk about. Got a lot of great questions from the community. Before we begin, as always, I'd like to introduce our creative director, Chris Joppa Perkins, who always does this show beside me. So Chris, thank you once again for putting up with me and answering some amazing questions from our community.
Absolutely. It's an exciting topic. I'm I've been pretty
exciting.
excited to dig into this one.
Excited.
Yeah, and I was really excited when we were kind of brainstorming what was next. Like, how about this? Yes, please. You didn't have to convince me much on talking about this topic. So before we begin, I do want to make sure everybody's aware. If you haven't listened to or viewed a Parting of the Veil before.
That's a whole different game. I could just have an excited counter. Maybe we should do that. I'll set something up like in the corner of the layout here that just ticks up every time somebody says excited or exciting. We'll see how high it goes. Drink a game? No, I don't want to die.
Or it's kind of like a live podcast. You can actually download this on your favorite podcast apps after we're done. Just search for Pantheon Development and you'll see the different things we put on there. And just keep in mind that this show is really about discussing our systems. We do our live stream every month, and that's going to be like your visual thing. But this is really a deep dig into what makes Pantheon, and talking into some of our design documents, something you may not see a bunch in other developments of games that we kind of have a unique spin on, getting to sit with Chris here. So I think that sums it up, Chris. Are you ready to go? Do you want to jump right into this one?
I mean, I don't know where else we'd go. Just sit here and
we just
take some sips.
Yeah, we just talk about other things. We can interact with the chat a little bit. No, okay. Let's jump right in. So let's start very basic. Chris, if you could give a very high level overview, we got a lot of questions to get into. I don't want to get ahead of the goal of what we are calling the mastery system for Pantheon.
So the best way to think about mastery is essentially a form of alternate advancement or secondary advancement. And what it is it's a companion system that companion meaning it's with you from the start. And as you progress through the game, as you level up, as you gain experience, complete quests, that whole time you are contributing to this pool of experience called mastery. And we'll get into some of the details of that here in a bit. But essentially, the idea is that as you are taking your character on this progression journey, that you would have many opportunities along the way to make some decisions about how you upgrade and how you modify certain aspects of your character, certain aspects of your character's abilities. Thematically, the way I like to think about it is unlocking your full potential. That's always kind of resonated with me. As you level up, you're getting stronger and you're getting access to new abilities and things like that. But these abilities you're using all the time. This character is living and breathing and existing and operating in this world all the time. And so the sense of mastery, the sense of like over time I'm unlocking my full potential in these areas of my class is really intriguing to me. And so that's what the mastery system is meant to express, is it's a means of opening up deeper levels of your potential by updating and evolving and kind of strengthening or changing some of the aspects about what your abilities can do as you master them, and what your character is capable of doing as you master your character in a sense.
Okay, good high level overview, and don't worry, we're going to go very in depth today. So before we get into the mastery feature itself and start breaking it down, you just mentioned like an experience pool, but I believe last we talked about mastery. There's a few different ways players will be able to achieve mastery points. So can you give a rundown of how somebody who on their character in Pantheon will experience gaining mastery points?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So there are currently 4 ways for you to gain mastery points. And I say currently because the system, I'm jumping ahead to a question coming up later, but
oh boy.
It is in now. It will be a part of the upcoming test in May. It's the most recent system since the refactor we did some years ago. The most recent system that we've brought back in that has kind of gone offline for a little while since that refactor. But right now, you will gain mastery points in 4 ways. The first way is every time you level up. So the first mastery point you'll get is when you ding level 2, and then you'll get a mastery point every time you ding from then on out. The second way is when you open the inventory, you see your adventuring experience bar, but then underneath that, there's a second bar that is for your mastery experience. And every time there is an experience event, an experience gain event, whether that's through killing a mob, solo, whether that's through getting experience when your group kills a mob, whether that's completing a quest, whether that's exploring an area and getting experience for finding a new area. Whenever there is an experience gain event, you are going to receive an amount of mastery experience, and that amount is flat. And I'll even just lay out kind of the math, because it's very simple right now. It's literally your mastery bar is a bar of a potential 100 mastery experience points, and you get 1 mastery experience every time there is an experience event. So you need to kill, at this stage right now, you need to kill 100 NPCs to fill your bar up for the first time and get that first point. But again, every experience event is contributing that single point. And the idea there is that we want, and that's these are numbers that will be tweaked as we move along and whatnot. But the idea is that it would be a flat kind of amount, and so that whether you're level 1 or level 50, the amount needed to fill this bar stays the same. That is not precluding the possibility that we might down the road, as we get into higher and higher levels and have some more critical mass moving through there, and certainly see what players are capable of doing and how quickly they're capable of filling that bar, we might change that paradigm up a little bit. But that is how it works currently. The third way to gain mastery points is through as a task reward or quest rewards. For certain quests, these are not every quest, but there would be certain quests, certain tasks that you would have that as a reward. And then the final way, the fourth way, is as a extremely rare world drop, meaning that any NPC in the game has a very, very small chance to drop a mastery shard. And once you've gathered 4 mastery shards, then you can combine those together into a mastery crystal that, once you consume that, will give you a point as well. And those shards can be traded, they can be sold.
Matt, you brought that up. That was going to be a follow-up question, because I know in the past you had said that was possible. So
yeah.
So
that pretty much sounds the same as when they first introduced the system, which Sleepy Frog was saying, Bass, did you list mastery in the library? And yes, and I think the library is going to be a nice companion for this video, because if we go to the Great Hall, do a search for mastery, looks like 2020, was when they first introduced it. That's when they were talking about point acquisition and that sort of stuff. And I think I made a video kind of summarizing the information from that. And it sounds pretty much exactly like what you just said, although we went into a little bit more detail. I don't remember the thing about there being 100 XP events per mastery point. It's kind of interesting because, for the sake of efficiency, I'm just thinking okay, so you could just farm mobs that just give you just a little bit of XP, much lower level, very easy to kill, just give you a tiny bit of XP, but you could kill those real quick and fill up your mastery bar relatively easily. And that might not be a bad thing to be able to do just while you're soloing. You just solo those. So that's a good example maybe of things where it's hey, maybe you don't have a whole lot of time. Maybe you don't want to maybe you're just not feeling like getting with another group or something, and you just prefer to solo. Well, one of the kind of these forms of progression that you could try out is just farming some mastery points. It's not bad. It is kind of an interesting take on that, and it's one of those things where it's like, we'll have to just kind of see how it is in practice. And he even kind of said that, where it's like, we'll have to see how that plays out long term, because, if it all kind of balances out in the end. Because I'm imagining, so like 100 kills basically. The early levels, you might not even have to kill that much stuff. You might have a few mastery points, or you might have a few levels before you even get your first mastery point from filling up the bar. I'm estimating. Don't quote me on this, but it's like, I bet you could get your first few levels in under 100 kills. But then once you get up to the higher levels, levels can get quite long, but once you reach higher levels, and so it's then you're getting multiple mastery points before you even level up once, so it's like, I don't know, that's just a numbers thing. They'll have to be tweaked when there's more data available to it. But that's I think that's kind of a cool way of going about it. And because keep in mind too that it's like, most quests in Pantheon don't reward XP. It's kind of something a little unusual that Pantheon does compared to how most MMOs, like the theme park MMOs, you just doing quests is just how you XP. You just go from exclamation mark to question mark and get your XP, and then do the next one, and do the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and you just follow that path that's been determined as the most efficient. That's the quickest way to just level up, as opposed to in Pantheon, where there isn't really a playbook. You kind of have to just go out into the world and get XP by just killing stuff. So, the quests that gives you not XP, but things like coin or items or even abilities or faction or things like that. Although he did say some quests might just give you like a whole mastery point, which would be pretty sweet. And then looting, that sounds like like he really emphasized how exceedingly rare that would be to get a drop, and that's like a quarter of a mastery point. Like that's not a lot. Like for how rare it is. Now it's like, anything in the world could drop it, right? So it's like, I don't think it would be like that mind blowing to loot one. Again, I'm just guessing here, just trying to pick up what he's hinting at. It's the sort of thing where it's like, I think it will still be cool. Like it's cool to have things that are so just everybody knows are just super rare, so that when you do drop one, you are kind of like, wow, like that's not something you see every day, really. So I think that's like, it's a cool feeling when you see something like that drop. Even if it is just a quarter of a mastery point, which doesn't seem like it will be that big of a deal, when you get one every time you level up, or if you fill that bar or do quests or things like that. I think it would be even cooler if it would just dropped whole mastery points. Like if you're really going to make them insanely rare, I don't know. But then there's the tradable aspect of them too. I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. But looting things that just everybody knows are rare, even if they're not crazy powerful, because like I said, a quarter of a mastery point is like, it's nice, but it's like, it's not like a game changer. But if that's like a universal drop, it's very, very rare. I think that's still, that can be a good feeling. Terra Skull says, wonder if crafting will contribute to mastery in any way. I believe there has been talk about that, but I don't know. We'll have to see. So this is a 50-minute video. We're 8 minutes in, so maybe that, I wouldn't be surprised if that comes up later. We will see.
Maybe a very valuable item you could get your hands on and make some cash early in the game if you want to sacrifice giving it away, right? It's that kind of choice. Do I want to keep it? So that's awesome. Cool. So you have mentioned in the past that there will be 2 types of mastery pools. A player can invest in them, and kind of choose. So one of these is directly related to class abilities. And then there's sort of, and we haven't talked much about this, I don't want to get into it just yet, but that there's this base character mastery pool, like
the greater mastery system is what he calls.
So I'm excited to talk about both of these today. But can we start with the class abilities and what
this? If you played EverQuest and you're familiar with EverQuest AA or alternate advancement system, sounds very similar. And I'm sure that is, Joppa being an EQ player, I'm sure that's part of the inspiration. Now, going off what we know of last time they talked about this system, there are some very notable differences. It's not like a copy-paste situation, but the idea that you could either, that there are just kind of general upgrades that apply to all characters that, just pretty kind of straightforward things that increase your stats or, other certain traits or something that you have that are just kind of like passive and always beneficial. You have that category that applies to everyone, and then you have a different category that is specific to that character's class. You really specialize in certain aspects of that class. Although I shouldn't use the word specialize, because ultimately, theoretically, everyone of that class would be able to fill out all of the optional mastery upgrades. It's not like you have to choose a path like in some games, where they are mutually exclusive. But instead, you could theoretically get all of the upgrades of that class, but that would just take an incredibly long amount of time. So really, the choice is, what do you prioritize? Which way do you go first? What sort of what's the order of upgrades for your class? And that's kind of how you, make your own approach to things. So that's kind of the general, my general perception of it. But yeah, let's see how much it's actually changed.
That'll look like. So before we go too deep, what's the goal with using mastery specifically for class abilities before I don't want to go too in depth yet.
So you want to
just like with
class abilities or the general character mastery?
Like the general, no, starting with class abilities, but like without going into detail on them, like what's the goal that we want to do with abilities and mastery?
Got it. So as I was saying in the beginning, this has a kind of a secondary progression, alternate advancement, alternate progression, secondary progression, the different ways of saying the same thing, that this is the joy in these games of getting higher level, getting more abilities, reaching that next tier where now, I'm getting these new abilities. That's huge. It's a very integral part of the joy and the satisfaction of the loop of these games. we want to take that a step further and say, okay, now that you have this ability, there are ways that you can progress these abilities even further by choosing to invest these mastery points in them. And the system is simple in the sense that it sits kind of as that just secondary progression layer, but it's also very deep and kind of vast, because every single ability in your arsenal has mastery upgrades available to it. Some of these,
every ability.
We'll get into some specific examples here in a bit, but you will see some mastery upgrades that are more kind of incremental improvement in nature. So it might be a mana cost reduction. It might be something like a damage bonus or a cooldown reduction, something like that. But then in most cases, the final mastery upgrade in the sequence, which is the most
impactful.
Potent one,
yeah,
impactful one. You'll see some pretty diverse results from that. Everything from well, I'll wait till we get into some examples.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a good segue. So the next thing I was going to ask you is, we've recently launched doing class refreshes, a lot of which has been based on community feedback, QA team feedback. And we're seeing a lot of positive things, as we kind of talked about as we did our Dire Lord one last week at our dev stream, and everyone can look forward to more of these. So the biggest thing with this is, I know how much everybody loves class details. And as we're talking about class mastery, I thought maybe you could go in and give us maybe like one example per class about what this is going to look like. So you down for that? Can we go into like what a mastery run on an ability for a class would be for each one?
I sure can. Yeah, this is the good stuff, the exciting stuff.
Okay, so
what class are we gonna start with?
We're gonna go with Rogue first. I think just unbiased. We just pick Rogue.
God.
Did you just draw that one out of a hat?
Just right out of a hat. There was no bias at all.
The hat that you're wearing.
Yeah, that's why I'm not wearing the hat. I had to put the glasses in it. Is that fair?
Got it. More than fair. All right, so we'll start with Rogue. So let's do backstab.
Wait. Let's do what?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Is this a bean?
That's a bean. It's a bean.
Did everybody write that down? Mark the video.
Co was just asking about backstab.
So let's do backstab. Backstab, you'll see something like, your first mastery upgrade is going to increase the damage threshold of backstab. So your backstab is going to permanently do more damage with that first point. Second point of mastery is going to reduce the cooldown. So you're going to be able to backstab more often. The third mastery point is going to cause backstab when the target that you're backstabbing is vulnerable. Backstab will immediately refresh the cooldown on Blackjack Kick.
Okay.
So you have a good example here of full mastery opening up a synergy with a state that the NPC can be in, and then when taking advantage of that state, you're able to, as often as you can backstab, you're able to immediately refresh the cooldown on Blackjack Kick, which has a trickle-down effect because of Blackjack's ability to generate opportunity points outside of stealth, and you instantly, kind of open up a nice little mechanic there to generate opportunity in combat, in active combat. So I like that one. I like the synergy of that one, and I'm excited to get backstab back in there as a staple.
Excited.
Yeah, and for those.
Oh, wait. Well, okay. I'm going to pose a question. I'm just going to throw it out there. We'll see if they answer it later. One of the kind of key things about the mastery system the last time it was shown in 2020, 2021, was that first upgrade always costs 1 point. But then I think it was like across the board that like the second upgrade would cost 3 points, and then like the third upgrade would cost 9 points or something like that. So it's like exponential increase in, yes, the power, but also the amount of mastery points that it requires to unlock. And it almost made it sound like it was just 1, 2, 3 now. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll have to see if there is any change to that, because 9 mastery points sounds like a lot. Like if you only get one when you level up, kill 100 XP giving mobs, or do a whole quest, or get 4 of these extremely rare drops, like that. 9 mastery points is to get 1 upgrade on 1 ability. In this context, seems like a lot. But we'll see. Thorndeep says they are in a real riff mood. I agree. I kind of like it though. Like they're actually vibing pretty good. Subanev, first time chat, says, so I imagine with a class like Rogue, you can choose to be high DPS or high utility. Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly what the Rogue does. And that's how a lot of the classes are set up, is that you have that choice. Like you have kind of a primary role, but also a secondary role that you can flex into if the situation calls for it. So with the Rogue, yep, that's very much DPS as their primary role. They can just really lean in and do high DPS. Or again, if the situation calls for it, depending on the group makeup, depending on the particular encounter, they can kind of scale back their DPS to then temporarily be able to offer some more utility. In the Rogue's case, it is crowd control. They have things like traps that can root people in place, or they can do like smoke tricks to mesmerize creatures. So they have some kind of like limited short-term crowd control capabilities that can really come handy again if maybe you don't have an enchanter, maybe your enchanter's dead or out of mana, or whatever the case may be. That they can quickly kind of like switch gears to take care of something else. Like you go watch my video where I played the monk last week in Pantheon, and Ko was on the rogue, or I was on the monk, and so the monk has also DPS as their primary role, but as an off tank as their secondary role, which came in handy a couple times in the Spirit Manor there. When one time when Nate went down, Nate just got absolutely slapped. Like one hit went down, and it's like, all right, the monk's got to step in there to tank. You kind of like substitute tank again, short term. It's like a monk really like rarely is going to be your main tank for the entire session. You could maybe make that work if you're really desperate. But really they are DPS who can act as a tank. They can sacrifice DPS to stay alive and hold aggro for limited amounts of time. Certainly not as much as the Dire Lord can, but you saw I made it work there for a couple times, like when Nate goes down, and the monk had to kind of like buy the group some time. I can get their aggro, get them on me, stay alive just long enough for the healer to get the Dire Lord back up, or whatever the case may be, or just finish out the last little bit of the fight. Or maybe like when Theric went down, he was on the enchanter, crowd control situation. Either he goes down or he's out of mana. And we're the Spirit Manor, we're really getting like lots of repops. We're getting kind of overrun. Maybe, Ko wasn't able to do crowd control or something. So I just have to kind of maybe just take a mob's aggro and just kind of hold it for a little while. Because it's better for them to be wailing on me than on like our healer or something, or a Drac who is on a really squishy wizard. So it's interesting. There's a lot of really interesting decisions that need to be made there, and a lot of knowledge that's required about the game, like knowing that a Dire Lord can not hold the aggro of multiple creatures simultaneously very well. He was able to hold maybe 2 creatures maybe pretty reliably, but after that, then you have to either start doing crowd control or you have to start doing some off tanking. And that's where you get that group interdependency going. Each class kind of has their pros and cons. And there's a lot of really interesting decisions that are involved in that, tactical decisions that make it really interesting. But honestly, like, is not always very obvious from a viewer perspective. If you're just at home just watching Pantheon get played, you know, it's not always obvious all the things that are going through our head when we're playing. I mean, we're doing our best, and I think we will continue to get better at this if they allow us to keep streaming Pantheon on a regular basis. I think we'll get better at kind of explaining what's going on. I mean, we tried in this past stream. Hopefully that was, hopefully you could tell that we were trying to kind of explain our thought process in how strategic these different fights were. But we'll get better at that, because that really is, I mean, that is the piece de resistance of Pantheon, in my opinion, is that strategic gameplay and all that goes into it. And I think the mastery system, let's tie this back into the main conversation. The mastery system will open up even more opportunities for that, more capabilities for your abilities, more things that you can do, and more decisions that you have to make. I want to let Minus resume what he was saying, because there was something that I wanted to touch on, but we'll see. It sounds like he was about to touch on it anyway.
That are saying backstab's on the webpage. It's always been there. It was there. There was some class changes and some stuff we were playing around with. So those that aren't VIP testers probably didn't know, but kind of giving a little bean out here that backstab was kind of put on the shelf a little bit. And we're trying some other things. So that's an exciting bean. That's why I didn't know. For those of you that don't know, we talked about this earlier today in our Discord, Joppa, is that I don't know the answers to the questions. I sort of like how we do this now. I kind of give you a flow, and then I get to just react. So it's fun.
Okay, so that was not what I was going to say. So they're talking about synergy and states, which is something that I'm really excited about. Excited. Does it count when I say it, or only when they say it? I don't think it counts when I say it. Okay, so let's tie this back. Joppa was talking about backstab having a different effect when used on a target that is vulnerable. Okay, what does that mean? Speaking of strategy in combat, this is something that did not really come into play in the stream, in our last stream, but I would expect that the mastery system will start to bring more of this stuff out of the woodwork and into the forefront of gameplay. Is state manipulation, I guess we'll call it. It's not an official term. It's not a great term, but these statuses, statii. What's the plural of statuses? Anyway, these states that you can put NPCs in, and NPCs can put you in too. We have seen examples of this in game before, but like I said, I think there'll be more of them coming online here in a little bit. So things like off balance is a really easy example. As you could have abilities that, among other things, also put a creature into an off balance state, which is not really a debuff, because that in and of itself doesn't do anything. Like a debuff, you think of something as like it decreases your armor class, or decreases your movement speed, or your resistances, or whatever the case may be. Like it is debuffing your stats. But that is not the case for these statuses. Literally, a status is just saying that you are off balance. That's it. It doesn't mean anything. It's just, by the way, you're off balance. It's a thing that then other abilities can come in and take advantage of. So being off balance doesn't do anything unless there's something else that is added on top of it. It's like a catalyst for a chemical reaction. It's inert on its own, but when you come in with a backstab or something else that specifically says it takes advantage of that particular status, then you get an even bigger effect. Like you could have something like, an ability that, maybe does damage and puts a creature, its target, into an off-balance state. And then you have something, another ability, which maybe you have, or maybe another class has. And maybe it's an add-on to an ability that was unlocked through the mastery system that says this ability does damage. And if the creature is in an off-balance state, knocks them down for 3 seconds. Again, I'm making things up here, but this is those are the mechanics of how it works. And so now you really can like start to get a feel for the strategy and the coordination of combat, particularly between different classes, where there might be an effect that you really need in a certain situation, but you can't do it on your own, and this other guy in your group can't do it on his own. So you need to coordinate, and you need to communicate, and you need to time it correctly, because only with your powers combined can you achieve that desired effect of knocking them down or pushing them back, or whatever the case may be. There's tons of different outcomes that can come, lots of different types of statuses that you can put them in, and lots of different effects that can have. So that, to me, that is the thing that really excites me about the mastery system, is really building on that idea and really expounding on all these different possibilities. That I think is really going to make combat even more intense and tactical, and really make players shine when they know what they're doing. They know their class. They know how other people's classes work in their group. They know what they're capable of, and they can communicate it, and they can execute on it. That's I think when they're really going to shine. So let's keep listening.
Let's do Dire Lord next. How about that?
Okay. So for these, I've picked, something that I would consider kind of an iconic ability, or at least an important ability in the kit. So for Dire Lord, we'll do Provoking Phantoms. So the first point of mastery for Provoking Phantoms currently is going to reduce the cooldown of the ability, make it more available, and therefore, allow Dire Lord.
Provoking Phantoms is their aggro or like taunt ability, basically. Builds hate. It's something that they apply on a target. It can be done at a range, applies to a target, and they can add stacks to Provoking Phantoms. And the more stacks, basically, the more that thing hates you. It provokes them to attack you, the Dire Lord, and that is what allows the Dire Lord to get such incredibly high aggro of a creature that makes it very, very difficult for other people to peel it off when they really get those. But it takes a little bit of time. But once they get those once they keep ramping up those stacks, that creature's pretty much locked onto them. The downside, like I was saying earlier, is that I don't think it can be used on more than one creature at a time. I'm pretty sure that, I know that was the case at one time, and I'm pretty sure that's still the case, where it's like if you target a different creature with Provoking Phantoms, it removes all the stacks from the other one. You can only have Provoking Phantom stacks on one creature at a time. Obviously, it can hold aggro through other means of multiple creatures at a time, but you can really only have one really, really well. So they would make good tanks for like like in a boss fight, if you have like a main boss and you really want them to just hold on to that one boss, they can do that well. But like other things, if you start getting ads and stuff, that's where you start needing, like I was saying earlier, you need like off tanks or crowd control or things like that. So that's what I just want to give you a little bit. That's the context. That's the ability that they're talking about.
Lords to have a little bit more freedom, and when they are able to put that ability on something else. I'm going to give a few like kind of tester beans here. Just I'm going to be talking to the testers a little bit because they know kind of where things have been, and so when I mention a particular change or adjustment, then it won't be lost on them. But one thing to expect probably by next session is that repeatedly casting Provoking Phantoms on the same target is not going to increase the stacks of Provoking Phantoms. And then along with that, auto attacks are not going to increase Provoking Phantom stacks. It's going to go back to being purely essence-based abilities that are going to increase those stacks, which will make some of these mastery upgrades important. The second point, or the second upgrade, I shouldn't say points because the point cost isn't.
We'll get into that.
Okay. Yeah, they're going to get into that.
So first is going to reduce the cooldown. Second is going to increase the initial threat generated by Provoking Phantoms by a good amount. So it's going to allow it to function a little bit more in some cases as kind of a snap ability to snap taunt a little bit once you get that step. And then the final point,
it's pretty big, actually.
Provoking Phantoms is going to be what engages your auto attacks as a mechanism to increase the stacks.
Okay.
So we're sliding that out of the baseline functionality of the ability and putting that more as like a fully upgraded Provoking Phantoms. Leave it at that.
And just so we can clarify a little bit, when we talk about the ability, maybe let's kind of explain what it is in its base. But Provoking Phantoms is a ranged ability for a Dire Lord that allows that target now to be marked, and it can only be on one target. And when that target is marked with Provoking Phantoms, specific abilities will increase the stacks of Provoking Phantoms on that target. And what that does is, as the stacks increase, any threat gaining abilities actually enable you to get a higher percentage of threat from those abilities per stack. So it's a way that what makes the Dire Lord very unique, and Jop, if I'm talking wrong here, just jump in, but is that Dire Lord may not be the greatest immediate threat. Now you can see with that mastery improvement, maybe that helps a lot.
Right.
But it will be something where a Dire Lord is capable of really holding, like if they're on a single target for a while, they're going to really be able to be really strong at holding and generating threat over time. So it's kind of a differentiator in their tanking style, I believe. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for one thing, I'm glad I was right. But he made a good point, though, that that's one of the things that makes the Dire Lord unique, and the benefit of knowing how the other classes in your group work is that the Dire Lord is the sort of thing where their aggro starts off a little slow. Like I said, it takes a little bit of time for them to build up those stacks, and until they have those stacks really racked up, aggro is not super solid. So if you're in a DPS role in that group where your Dire Lord is tanking, you should know to hold off just a little bit, not go in super gung-ho, where so that you can allow them to build up their stacks. Because if you're a wizard or something and it's like your Dire Lord just got aggro and you only wait a couple seconds before really laying on a nuke, well, you better expect to take that aggro. But a skill and well-tuned group will know that you need to give your Dire Lord a little bit of time. But then once they do, you can go all out, and the Dire Lord is probably not gonna lose it. But then you get these masteries system upgrade where it's like, okay, maybe the Dire Lord really won't end up needing as much time to build up that hate if they have upgraded that ability. But that might be something worth asking when you get into a group. Where they're at on that ability progression. So, yeah, pretty cool.
All right. Cleric. Let's go into that.
Okay, so cleric, I chose Ward on Death is our ability to look at. So Ward on Death is our the clerics. I say our. I am.
You are
cleric at
cleric.
heart.
Hey, listen. If I'm allowed to claim rogue, you are obviously allowed to claim cleric.
Yeah. So Ward on Death and the Ward on Death line is our unique, strong, direct damage towards undead exclusively. And so what Mastery does is it is going to increase the damage that does. The first point of Mastery is going to increase the damage that it's doing overall. And then from there, it's going to introduce a snare component. So you'll be able to, through your Ward on Death line, you'll be able to actually slow the movement speed of the undead target. And then eventually it's going to put that target into a weakened state. And the reason that's important is because there could be, for example, certain ways that clerics themselves can capitalize on the weakened state, but it also further strengthens them toward undead in group situations because now you've introduced a state that so many other classes in various ways can capitalize on. And so it provides some really interesting group utility and synergistic opportunities for Ward on Death besides just, nuking at the thing.
Cool. Awesome. Next up, let's go with Enchanter.
Oh, here we go.
So for Enchanter, I picked.
Before we get into that, because I really want to, because you know me, I'm really looking into the Enchanter. I know I played a monk in the last stream, which I did. I do like the monk. I'm almost certainly will run a monk alt pretty seriously because I do like the monk. I love being able to feign death and being able to just like lay into the DPS, but they have still pretty good flexibility, good survivability. I vibe with the monk for sure. I was gonna say too earlier is that like I don't actually really like the Dire Lord. For as much as I know about it, I have played it, but I don't like it. Just for me, just for my style. But I wanted to make a point though that it's like how important it is to know how other classes work, even if you don't like them, and play them even if you don't like them, so that you can understand firsthand how they work, because it's legitimately beneficial to know so that when you are playing your main classes that you actually enjoy, you will be able to do that better if you know how the other classes work and how you can best suit them, So I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I think that is really important. But the Enchanter. So now we're getting into the Enchanter. You know me, I'm like I like my clerics. There's lots of classes that I like, and I will try them all at some point. But the Enchanter has been my mistress lately. So let's see what sort of upgrades we get.
Mesmerize, surprise.
So I don't even think, do we have to even explain what Mesmerize is?
Yeah, well,
yeah,
you did a good job, person. So why don't you give it a quick?
You can never over explain.
Basically, stop a target in its tracks, just make it stand there, kind of hold it, crowd control it, so you can. If you get multiple pulls or you get multiple enemies, or you need to break up a camp, you can take that enemy and just kind of put it on hold while you're fighting through enemies. For those of you that don't know, like old school style games that might have had something like that. You good? That was okay?
Okay.
Okay, good.
It was only okay. I'm going to just go and say that was a mediocre explanation. I mean, that's the main part. A key difference in the way that Pantheon's mesmerization works, however, is that, and this is pretty unique to Pantheon. I haven't seen it work. I mean, there's not a whole lot of games that work that have traditional crowd control like this anyway. But even the ones that do, I haven't seen it work like this in Pantheon, which is arguably less powerful but more strategic. In that you can apply mesmerize to as many different targets as you want, but for each target that you like, but every time you apply mesmerize to a target, it gradually drains mana from you. Like every so many ticks, a certain amount of mana gets drained, and so you have to decide as an enchanter, do I want to hold down one mob for a really long time because I have, this amount of mana left, and knowing that it will get drained, like it's just basic math. I can use this amount of mana to just hold one creature down for this amount of time, or do I need to lock down, let's say, 2 creatures, but because that creature is gonna start draining mana from me too, so it's like I'm holding down 2 creatures, but each of them for only half the amount of time as I would if it was just one. So some decisions there, it depends on the situation. That is a key differentiator of how Mesmerize works in Pantheon. But we'll see if maybe that's how it starts in its base form, but then you can improve it through the mastery system.
That'll work nicely. All right, so for the enchanter with mesmerize, your first mastery point is going to reduce the mana cost. It's going to make that spell more efficient to cast, which is important for the enchanter, especially in situations where they're having to maintain a lot of mesmerize effects on multiple different mobs. The second upgrade is going to be an increased duration on your mesmerize. So in addition to very important, in addition to charisma being fundamentally part of increasing that duration, your charisma attribute now through mastery, you're going to be able to further increase that. And then the final update, or the final upgrade, mastery upgrade to mesmerize, is going to be a reduction in the mana upkeep cost. So there is a cost, a perpetual upkeep cost to mesmerize, and that grows as you have more and more NPCs mesmerized. So if you just have one mesmerized, then it's a pretty negligible amount of mana. If you've got 3 or 4 all at once, then that upkeep cost is going to grow. So what this final mastery upgrade does is significantly reduce that drain amount to the degree that it may not.
I should have known that
it
they
may
were
completely fall off.
Touch on that,
depending on the amount of targets.
With a single target mes, and then make it much easier to sustain for longer periods, having multiple mes.
That's excellent. It's funny, I was looking at the list, I realized I left a class off, but don't worry, it's back. Shaman. How about Shaman?
All right, so Shaman, we'll look at their primary hot line. So this will be the mantle line, Mantle of Mist. Your first mastery point is going to increase the amount of healing that it does. All of the healing events within Mantle, the initial heal and then the subsequent ticks. The second thing it's going to do is it's going to give each actually the first 2 mastery points are going to be kind of exponential increases in healing. So first one is going to some percentage of healing increase. Second one's going to be exponentially greater. So it's just going to be doing significantly more healing. The third mastery upgrade for the Mantle line is going to cause each of the ticks of healing to have a chance to proc Surging Power, which is a proc that makes your next spell instant cast.
Wow. That's a really good one, especially as a baseline hot, which they use quite frequently. It's a good one. Mm-hmm.
Monk. I wonder which ability people think about with
You're going to go there? You going there?
Oh boy, Feign Death?
Well, where's there?
Do you just want me to mispronounce it? Is that what you're trying to do here?
I'm curious if you will.
Yeah, I won't now. Feign Death?
Well, do you know what it is? Oh, yes, you're correct. Feign Death.
I sometimes say Feign Death.
I was like, how can you mispronounce that?
There you go. Everybody in the chat needed me to make you laugh, and that was it. That's all I had to do.
So you don't actually say fiend, you just said that to try to make me laugh?
No, I probably do. I probably say that more than Fane,
You
but
probably
I knew
do.
I had to say Fane
Why not?
first.
Why wouldn't it be fiendeth?
Because I just use Fane. I don't say the second part.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, Java's
Two wrongs don't make a right.
his deadpan.
All right. So with Feign Death, so the first mastery point in Feign Death is going to reduce the cooldown on the ability, so enable you to use Feign Death more frequently, which is very important if you're in a situation where it's failed, or you're maybe you Feign Death and you didn't realize that the one caster mob was in the middle of spell casting, so you feign, it's successful, but boom, you get hit, and then now everything's back on you. It's going to reduce that cooldown, enable you to feign more frequently. The second mastery point is going to reduce the base chance, if you will, that a higher level NPC will see through the ruse once you stand back up. So I'll wait until we do the monk review to kind of go much deeper into the mechanics of Feign Death, but they are pretty robust. It's a pretty deep set of logic that's governing Feign Death, because it's an extremely powerful ability, and so it needs a lot of thoughtful logic going on in how it functions. I will though say, just as another being, that Feign Death in its full kind of implementation is going to be present in the next playtest as well. And it's a skill. It's a skill that you need to improve. It's a skill that takes a while to improve. It's a skill that fails a lot at first. Many of you will be familiar with kind of that feel. I'm really happy with kind of the place that we got it to. And then the final upgrade for Feign Death is actually allows you to rest, to be in a resting state while you're feigned.
Wow. I remember days in my past doing that with some health regen gear on. It was nice, so that's cool.
Wow, you were just real relaxed.
That's huge for monks. So that's it. That's it for classes. No, I'm kidding. I forgot to put Wizard on, so let's talk about Wizard. You imagine Wizard fans just lose their mind.
They would absolutely lose.
All right, Mr. Rogers, 88. Says, how do you keep a straight face with Pantheon? We all know it's vaporware, and if it does come out, it will be hot garbage. And he says you're not trolling. This is a perfect example of if you're genuinely not trolling and that's a legitimate question, I'd be happy to answer that. Because I think this is worth discussing. It's a very common sentiment, and if we just ignore that many people who feel that way, I don't think that's right, because there's a very legitimate discussion to be had there. I believe you. I believe that you want Pantheon to come out just as much as anyone else, and that you pledged. And I believe that you are feeling that way just because you have lost patience and you're just burnt out and tired of waiting. And I believe you. And I believe that is the case for many people who feel that same way. Right? So let's talk about that just a little bit. I already kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the stream, which when this is a VOD, you can go back and watch that. But let's start with the term vaporware. It's funny. That term has always been funny to me, because the term vaporware originally is meant for a product that literally never existed, was all just talk. Nothing had ever been done to actually make it a reality. It was just all a ruse, that's thus the vapor. There was no these products, there never actually any substance to them. It was all just an idea, right? which we know is not literally the case with Pantheon, because I literally just played it 6 days ago. And I streamed it. And you can watch me play the game with hundreds of other people, right? But if we're starting pedantically, very literally, it is not Vaporware, because there is a product there that people play. And so, yes, it is a limited amount of people, but it is a product, so it's not Vaporware. Now, what I think probably what that term has been conflated to mean is that it is a product that will never become publicly available. I think it's probably it's not a correct definition of the term, but I think that's probably how most people are using it. Which, again, I can put myself in a place where I can start to see why people would think that. I'll get to that in a little bit, though, because then you say if it does come out, it will be hot garbage. Again, I very much disagree with that, because I literally just played it 6 days ago and had a lot of fun doing it, right? So that can be your opinion. It might not be for you. If you're just saying, I'm not trolling, that is a fact. The fact is that that is not a fact. That is an opinion. And that can be your opinion. That's fine. Because Pantheon will not be for everyone. And I think that there are a lot of people too that maybe signed up, pledged really early. And as the game has evolved, as development moves on, and time goes on, it may have evolved into something that they didn't expect it to be, and maybe it is, not the game for them anymore. And that's frustrating, and maybe that's the case for you, if that is true. That maybe it has just evolved into a game that is just not to your liking. And if that's the case, then I legitimately would feel bad for you. But that is going to be the reality for some people, that Pantheon is not even trying to be appealing to all types of gamers. And so maybe you do think it's hot garbage, but again, that's an opinion. That's not a fact, because at the very same time, there are a lot of people, and there will be a lot of people who enjoy it. It's just different styles, depending on what you like in an MMO. If you like to spend, lots of time exploring and traveling, and you like the more strategic aspects of combat as opposed to the more like fast pace, really like precision types of combat. You get those different styles. If you like the really fast pace precision combat, then yeah, you're probably not going to like Pantheon. If you like being able to just teleport anywhere in the world whenever you want, because you just want your all action all the time, and you don't want to have to travel, then Pantheon's probably not going to be for you. But yeah, so it's a matter of an opinion. So really the question is, which is worth discussing, is will Pantheon come out? And let's just start with that. Right? So again, this is a matter of what sort of information you have available to you, because again, Pantheon's development process is very unconventional, and it has been very chaotic at times. It is a small team undertaking an incredibly large project with very little funding proportionally, and that there is no playbook for that. That is an absolutely wild undertaking, right? And that has made it very unpredictable, to be honest. And so obviously we can't say anything for sure, but having the perspective that I do, having done a lot of work to understand their process and their team over the past 7 years now. 7 years I've been doing this. That's like a master's degree. That I am confident that they have the grit and the people in the right places and the momentum necessary to not stop until it is done. And I'm very confident about that. What I am not confident about is how long that would be. And that's really anybody's guess. There is no way to know that, right? And like I always say, just the fact of that, how crazy unusual of a story this is, this whole crowdfunding an MMO from the ground up sort of thing. Like, I just enjoy watching the story, right? Like, you say you feel bad for people who follow the development because it's like getting sad. Again, that's your point of view. It all depends on how you view this. If you want to just watch an incredibly wild story unfold before your very eyes, that will probably never happen again. I mean, let's be honest. There will probably never be another MMO development story like this, right? There's from day one, like the whole crowdfunding and MMO thing on, starting on Kickstarter and going the way they did will probably never happen again. And so, it's a pretty just unique opportunity to be able to watch this happen and watch them claw their way through this process, right? If you look at it that way, it's awesome. Like, it is seriously the most fascinating thing. And I feel sad for the people who are missing out on this. Isn't that interesting? Like, that's it. If you're only looking at the end goal destination, because all you care about is just launch and just being able to play it at launch, well then, yeah, that's gonna be depressing because your goal is an incredibly long-term goal, and that's your only metric, right? So it all depends on what you're looking to get out of it. But the fact of the matter is that not everybody is looking to get the same thing out of it, right? Everybody has different opinions and perspectives and interests. There is a lot. One of the things that I love about the community and the people that show up here on a regular basis to the watch parties and stuff. It's a really unique community that we have about because we're just here for the journey. We're here on a journey together. And it honestly kind of feels like playing an MMO in that sense. that it it's about the leveling up process. It's not about getting to max level. It's about the process of getting there with friends and the ups and downs that come with that, and the strategy and the that involves. That's basically what we're looking at here as the developers take their journey of reaching launch day, So when you kind of change your frame of mind, it becomes a lot more enjoyable. Yeah, and that's just true with life. And I genuinely, I'm not joking when I say I feel bad for people who are incapable of changing their frame of mind to be able to look at things differently, right? Because then that's just sad. That's sad. So that's where I'm coming from personally. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense as to why we're here and why we're doing what they're doing. So, yeah, that answer. Chamomile chimes in and says, when will they have a release date? Well, because of that crowdfunded nature of the development, there really isn't any way to say even like when the release date will be, right? So we're really gonna go off on tangents in this stream. I can feel it. But these are important things. These are important things that I really can't talk about enough, to be honest, right? Traditional game development at a very basic level. Traditional game development. A studio gets a chunk of money. They pitch a game to like a publisher or something. And if the publisher likes it, they get a big chunk of money right off the bat, or maybe a promise, a contract of like, we will pay you X amount of money over this X period of time, you know? But they essentially have this guarantee that they'll have the money needed to, you know, get the staff that is needed to get it done in a reasonable amount of time, and they can plan out. They already know how much money they're going to have, right? So they can plan out. All right, if we have this amount of people, and this is the scope of our game. We know that okay, with this amount of people, it will take us this amount of time to reach this milestone, et cetera, and they can plan out further in advance. And that's how you get traditional game development. It says, okay, you know, we should be done in this amount of years or this amount of months or whatever. Now, obviously, even in traditional game development, a lot of times those estimates are wrong because unexpected things come up. Either people leave the company or maybe they hit some real like technological roadblock that takes way longer than they were expecting to overcome. Things come up, games get delayed all the time. But in crowdfunded development like this, they don't always know when the next big influx of money is going to come because it is depending on pledges from people, which they, you know, is fairly unpredictable. And then, you know, and investors, like private investors, money from them as well. But again, that's also something that's like, you can't count on it. You don't have like a contract with a publisher that you know for sure you're going to have this amount of money over X amount of time, right? And so with that, they can only plan out much shorter spans of time, right? And you know, they have a certain amount of runway, but it's not not enough to be able to say, okay, we should have it all done in this window of time. You know, so they have to have kind of different contingencies, different plans depending on what rate of funding they get. And so which they don't know. They have different plans lined up, but they don't know which one they're going to have to take because they don't know what rate the money is going to come in. Right? That is the fuel that keeps the fire going, is funding that allows them to hire more developers, et cetera, right? So that's a relatively short answer as to why. Just the very nature. Again, that's what makes this so weird. You like it because this sort of thing is unusual. This crowdfunding nature. You talk to some people, like, what do you mean they don't know when they're going to be done? Well, it's like this is crowdfunded. This is grassroots. It's not even, and it's not Ashes of Creation crowdfunded where they have their CEO who can just fund it out of his own pocket, basically. This is literally like they don't know what rate the money is going to come in over long periods of time. Could happen quickly. It could take a long time. But I think alpha, when they reach alpha, then it will become a lot more clear. If alpha goes well, that's like the great proving ground. You open up the gates to 10,000 plus people, for sure, at the very least. Then that's going to be really telling, and that's, you know, telling to the developers and also to publishers that they're trying to land deals with, you know, publishers, investors. You know, if the publishers and investors see alpha as a success, and if there's a lot of buzz around it because alpha is good, then publishers will see, okay, you know, there's a viable audience here. Like, this is a viable product. They've proven that there's a viable product, and so, you know, let's help them get it across the finish line. Alpha will be very telling because if that doesn't happen, and they don't get that big influx of money, then it's going to be a long, very, very, very long and difficult road ahead of them. That will be kind of the great fork in the road, so to speak, right? So that's why all eyes are on alpha right now. That's why so much care is being put into making sure alpha is a success, because it will more or less be the make it or break it point for the project. But until that moment, you can't say definitively like which way the product is going to go. I mean, you never can say anything definitively, but really with any sort of confidence as to the timeline. Does that make sense? Is that a little bit, provide a little bit more clarity? Mr. Rogers says, can you explain how they'll get investors when alpha looks like it was made in 2002? Shareholders won't invest in a game that looks so bad, and that's my opinion, yes, but it's shared by many. That's your opinion as a gamer. Investors aren't looking at it from the same perspective as a gamer. Because, yes, they absolutely invest in... They, all the time, invest in games that look bad, because visuals are not everything. Visuals are the superficial level, the thing that gamers care about. But investors and publishers are looking at it from a business perspective. They're looking at the long-term longevity of the game. They're looking at player retention. They're looking at, you know, where does this, like, what does this game bring to the table that is unique to the market? What are the systems? Things like that, the deeper things. True, investors invest in games that make them money. It's been stated by many VR execs that this game is made for EQ gamers. They have not said that. That is not a true statement. That pool of people is super small. You're right that the pool of people is super small. But I can literally just whip out the library right now. And I don't want to single you out. I'm not trying to, like, rag on you. But I don't think he's a troll. This is a legitimate sentiment that a lot of people have, which is why I feel like it's worth discussing, because I think a lot of people are just frustrated, and that frustration prevents them from being able to understand these things. like the library says, if you have limited your exposure to information, your picture of reality suffers. And that's what I see happening all the time, that people have limited their exposure to information about the game, and that causes their picture of its reality to suffer, right? This is case in point. And it's hilarious that you say it's been stated by many VR execs that this game is made for EQ gamers. They have not said that. That is part. EQ gamers are part of the target audience, but not exclusively the audience. Let's watch a clip. What kind of MMOs players Pantheon will resonate with?
Introducing new stuff.
We'll hit this because I think this is an important point, and then we'll move on. This is from another episode of Parting the Veil.
This was on our forums, and they said, "Can you give a quick elevator pitch?"
Oh, the elevator
or sales pitch. For those who grew up in a fast-paced theme park race to max level MMORPG, on why Pantheon is a game they should check out. And what did you say to me right away when it was a quick elevator pitch?
Well, I said, fortunately, I'm not the guy at Visionary Realms that has to craft elevator pitches. And therefore, this won't be super short trying to answer this. I don't have any desire to.
So, Sleepy Frog, yes, this has been discussed over and over again. But again, you got to think, like, not everybody watches all of these videos all the way through. Most people don't. And that's why it's worth having these conversations, especially since it's like complex. It's just a rule of life again, is that these complex topics, which crowdfunded MMO development is an extremely complex topic. Complex topics like are insanely difficult to convey accurately to large amounts of people simultaneously, right? Like it takes multiple conversations to be able to explain these sorts of things in a way that most people can grasp. Again, like this whole concept of crowdfunded MMO development in the grand scheme of game development is a pretty small fraction that has not been around for long enough for people to really see how it works. Again, some people don't care, and that's fine. If you don't care, then you don't care. You don't need to listen. What I'm interested in is the people who they do care, but they don't get it. But they want to. You know, if they genuinely want to, even if they're frustrated, they're all like fed up and just emotional about it because they've lost their patience. That's fine, but I think that's a key difference. You know, yes, some people want to troll, but I think that's just a subset, and there are some people that might seem like trolls, but really they are just upset and they want to get it, but they don't know how. And it involves it. I think it benefits the entire community to not just be like, oh well, they've already talked about that before, so clearly you're not even trying. You know what I mean? You're not even trying to be genuine because they've talked about it before. It's like, yes, they have, but it needs to be said multiple times, you know, before it really clicks. So, talking about the target audience, Mr. Rogers says every person who I've talked to that were or are excited for Pantheon are or current or ex EQ players. That's your sample size. I believe that. That's, you know, your circle. But But again, that is not the entirety of Pantheon's target audience. And you saying that a majority of people will enjoy EQ game aspects is a lie. I mean, no, I don't think anybody has even claimed that Pantheon is going to be this mass market smash success blockbuster Fortnite level. Everybody plays it. It's not. I know, but nobody is claiming that. Nobody is aiming for that. But that's not what is needed to be a success, right? We need to not think in binary terms where it's either black and white, where it's either, it's a game of King of the Hill. Either you reach World of Warcraft level numbers or you are a disaster, right? You are a failure. You should have never even tried because you didn't reach World of Warcraft level of success. We can't think in those terms because that's just not reality. There's so much gray space in between. A measure of success, asking Mr. Rogers, what is a measure of success then? Measure of success is if a game is profitable and is able to sustain a community for an extended period of time. That's all it takes. That doesn't actually take that many people if you have a lean, small company like this. The company that only has maybe 35 people on their payroll and is very judicious in how they spend their money. It actually does not take a large player base to be able to sustain that, right? Success is subjective. By a generally accepted definition, like if you create a game and it is able to stay online and make the company money profitably for years on end, how is that not a success, right? That's all that they're really going for, is to just put a game out into the world for the people who enjoy that style of game. Yes, EQ players are involved in that, but as we'll see from Joppa, I'm not going to step on his words, but there are other people who fall in that category as well. For those people who enjoy this style of game, to play and enjoy for a long time. All there is to it, right? Can we agree on that? Yeah, Velas says, yeah, I don't care if it's profitable, care if it's fun, and manages not to get shut down for the duration. Well, I get, yeah, the company primarily is, they need it to be profitable, but really it kind of is one and the same, where you say, if you want it to not get shut down for the duration of your playthrough, then you do care if it's profitable, because the way that it doesn't get shut down is by being profitable. You see what I mean? But yes, as players, the primary thing that we care about is having fun, right? And it's one of those things where, and the devs seem to get that too, that the way that you get like a game being fun is that is the single most important thing, right? That is the catalyst for all of this, right? You think about this cycle. If you make a game that is genuinely fun for an established audience, and then people have fun with it, then they will play it, and they'll keep playing it, and they will pay a subscription to play it. So that makes the game money, that makes it profitable, and because it's profitable, it's able to stay online for longer, and more people play it, etc., etc. That is the life cycle. But it absolutely hinges on it being fun, and in a way that people want to keep coming back for it more and more over long periods of time, making it a world that they can actually exist in and be happy in for long periods of time, as opposed to you get some of these really like predatory publishers where it's like, all right, we're just going to make a game. We're not going to think about long-term player retention. We're not going to design systems that keep people coming back more and more. We're just going to get them in and, you know, put all these microtransactions in and stuff to get as much money out of them as quickly as possible. And if they get tired of it and they leave, then we don't care because we got the money up front. You know what I mean? That's bad. That's bad. But that's not the goal here. Right. So let's hear the demographic that Pantheon's shooting for.
To try to put this into an elevator pitch, even though I understand, I appreciate the question. Yeah. Okay.
They gave you 30 seconds in chat.
To prepare what I'm going to say, or to give the whole thing start to finish?
No, go for it.
Oh, wow. I have had to do that a few times over the years, and given enough time, I can sit and distill something down. But
I should have changed the timestamp for this.
This is a really great question, though. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I really enjoy.
There's a lot of build up to this
thinking about
answer. This is one of the most
I
epic
can tell you right off the
pauses.
bat that, like, when I think about my 12-year-old that is, you know, knee deep into Fortnite and games like that, you know, as much as he loves seeing the things that I do, and as much as he loves, you know, the idea that his dad works on video games and things like that, you know, would he ever really want to play something like Pantheon? I think that age group, and, you know, teenagers in general, that age bracket, I think is an interesting one. Where my son, I could be wrong, pleasantly surprised, but for those that have really cut their teeth and grown up on that very competitive, fast-paced type of gameplay, I don't know. But even though that sounds maybe like a downer answer, the act, as I've thought about this a little bit, I'm actually very encouraged when I think about Pantheon's palatability, and I'll try to break down as best I can why, and it's going to go back to some of those words I mentioned earlier, because the reality is this: I think that people play video games and invest time in playing video games for reasons that don't have anything to do with pace or fast-paced versus slow-paced. I think people play video games because of how well that particular game does those three things I mentioned earlier: how well it establishes its loop, how well it communicates and creates avenues for progression, and what kind of prestige that it awards, what sense of prestige that it awards. And games that do that well, I think, can resonate with just about anybody, regardless of age group, regardless of background, whatever. And I'll give you some examples of why I think that. Take something like a Warzone, for example, or a Modern Warfare 2. You know, Warzone is the most hectic, frantic. You know, you're sliding around on your butt everywhere you go. You're spamming your ground slide. It is not anything that appeals to me personally, but that doesn't matter because there are a ton of people that play it. It's a good game for what it is. But I know people who main Warzone who also love Tarkov, Escape from Tarkov. Escape from Tarkov has become one of my top games of all time. I absolutely love it, and that's not being personally a big first-person shooter person. I've never really been into them that much, but I love Tarkov. But what's fascinating to me is how you can have people that love Warzone and love Tarkov. One of them is frantic, it's fast-paced, it's chaotic, it's, you know, just flinch motions everywhere you turn. Like it is insane. The other one is slow. It's steady. Some would argue a bit clunky. It is just on the total opposite end of the spectrum, and yet they're both incredibly satisfying games to play because they both do those three things really, really well. We are seeing in a new game, or a game that's it hasn't launched yet, but it's starting to kind of become more known. It's called Dark and Darker, which takes all of the things that are amazing about Tarkov and puts it into a medieval fantasy setting. Brilliant move. It's a game I'm excited to try, and it is as slow as you can imagine. The swinging of your weapons, the movement, like it is very slow, but the pacing works well within the context of that game. And again, the loop, the progression, the prestige, it's all there. People who play, some of the fast-paced, the more fast-paced MMOs and action combat MMOs and things like that can love Dark and Darker. So when I think about Pantheon and I think about its, how is it going to resonate with someone who is more used to and typically trends towards faster-paced games, I think the key is ultimately that we do those three things well. If the loop that exists, and the loop simply means like, what am I doing when I log into the game? Is there something attainable? Is there something coherent? Is there something meaningful? Is there some kind of like coherent, congruent thought that I have about what I'm going to do, what I want to do, and how well that loop ultimately starts and progresses and closes itself. The second is the progression, and that is, am I getting a sense of satisfaction as I go through this loop? Am I accomplishing things? Am I accumulating things? Am I acquiring things? Am I becoming more powerful? Am I becoming more capable? And then thirdly is the prestige, which is, at different points throughout that process, am I able to, in a sense, flex myself? Am I able to show off in certain manners what I am capable of doing because of what I've accomplished? And I think, again, if those three things are done well, and then the ultimate capstone on all of that being, is it fun? Do you genuinely have fun? Or are you just deeply invested in one of those three things? Is one of those three things, one of those three hooks in you really hard? I can tell you from personal experience with EverQuest, for example, which, just to be clear, I recently fired back up and started playing again because I had an itch to get in and play it again. But I'm not having fun when I play it. I am compelled by progression in that game. Progression is what hooks me with EverQuest. My hair's not blowing back, and I'm not sitting there just having the time of my life while I'm meditating and waiting to kill the next, the 100th thing that I'm killing. But what I am compelled by is I have never had a Shadow Knight, a level 70 Shadow Knight. I would really like to attain that. I want to experience what it's like to play that class and achieve that. That gets its hook in me. And that's me, I've played EverQuest for, it is, one of my top time, and will always be one of my favorite games. It inspires so much. So I'm not knocking on the game. It's an amazing game and still is amazingly. But I'm just highlighting, like, that's, so to bring it back around to Pantheon, the goal is, let's accomplish all three. Let's work hard to create a coherent loop that players can coherently understand and get behind whenever they log in to play the game. Let's make sure that there is ample vertical and horizontal paths of progression to make sure that that hook is robust. And let's make sure that there's opportunity for that prestige to be communicated to other players. And with those three things working in harmony, let's make sure the game's fun. Let's make sure that we are paying attention to whether the game is fun to play. We accomplish those things, and to the degree that we accomplish those things, I believe Pantheon is able to resonate with just about anybody.
Does that make a little bit more sense? I love that explanation. It was a long explanation, but I think it's worth pointing out, right? That it's not about just like let's reach out to the EverQuest community and try to give them, you know, a new game to play. It's more about the design philosophies and the values that yes, there are some overlap there. Like that is, you know, part of what made EverQuest such a hit in its day. But you know, there are you can get some of those values that are still very relevant in today's day and age. Like it's just part of just tapping into like the human desire for progression and prestige and that sort of thing. It's still very relevant today because you can find those values in a ton of other games too. So it's about doing those things well and not just, let's just copy these mechanics from EQ because this is what EQ players like. You know what I mean? So again, that's a long explanation. If you want, if you want to dig deeper into this, again, go to the library of Pantheon, do a Control F search for target audience. There's literally 21 different quotes of them talking about exactly this, about why people still think Pantheon is an EverQuest clone. You know, the target audience, the whole concept of niche. Like there are, in fact, a lot of people. There are a lot of examples of devs talking about how it is not an EQ clone, right? Not only targeting the EverQuest audience, right? One last thing, because you bring up an important point, Mr. Rogers, about when it takes 8 years to get to pre-alpha and there's no horizon in sight, them baiting us with the whole "we're fully funded, but additional funding will accelerate our development" is such hogwash. That is a carrot on a stick, right? So the main thing there is that they're not claiming to be fully funded. They have not. That is a unfortunate myth that has persisted through some misunderstandings that I myself fell for a while back in being under the impression that the project was fully funded. But that is not the case, and it has not been the case, right? They've specifically said that they are not fully funded. Again, using the library. January 2021, they got more funding from a private investor. Oh, actually, it was in the newsletter. This is not full funding, right? And that has continued to be the case since then. That's just one example off the top of my head, right? But they're not fully funded. So it's not like, oh yeah, they haven't claimed to be. Right? I can see where you would feel like that is just kind of like a carrot on the stick if it's like, oh, well, yeah, we're fully funded, but yeah, give us some more. You know, that's not the case. This is literally grassroots crowdfunding. That is the lifeblood. But that said, if you don't feel like supporting it financially yourself, then don't. You don't have to. Like that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I would encourage you not to. If you don't feel like that's right for you, then that's fine. Just don't. That's really all there is to it. Anyway, we need to get back on track here, because you're right, Mordred. That was quite the rabbit trail. But again, I should do like an entire stream sometime where we just talk about this. We just talk about the development process. We just walk through the library, clear up some of the myths, the misconceptions, talk about Pantheon's viability as a product. We could spend an entire afternoon talking about that, because there's a lot to it, and it's not something that can be easily conveyed in a short amount of time, right? And that's why we end up with so many just wildly different narratives in the MMO community, and all these different views that people have about Pantheon, right? Because it's complex stuff. It's not rocket science, but there's a long history that needs to be discussed. There's a lot that goes into it, right? But going back to what we were talking about earlier at the beginning of the stream, that's why, like, the YouTube comments and stuff about the last stream that we did, that's why those don't really bother me, to be honest. It's par for the course at this point, because I know that the vast majority of the people just don't have a big enough picture of it yet, and that will continue to be the case until more people can start to actually get their hands on Pantheon, like in alpha, right? Start lifting the NDA. Start getting people watching the game, and if at all possible, playing the game with their own two hands, so that they can see how fun it actually is, right? Then and only then will these things even just start to kind of come together for a lot of people, you know? So that will be the day. Hey, Twisted Pixels. I hope you're doing well too. I am. All right, let's get back to the other episode of Parting the Veil. What were we talking about? That was a great talk, though. I love this stuff. I could talk about that all day. Mastery system. That's right. We were in between classes. Almost exactly halfway through this stream. Let's see. We've been live over 2 hours now. We'll see. Are we going to hit the mythological 4-hour mark? Is it going to take another 2 hours to get through the next 25 minutes? I don't know. Let me close down some of these tabs here. Jesus. I hope you guys got something out of that, though. I hope you learned at least a little something. Hope it made a little bit more sense. Because, like I said, I would seriously consider doing an entire stream, just a chat about that. I think that would be cool. Now that I've kind of like shoehorned it into the very middle of this watch party, because it came up, right? Can't turn down that opportunity. But you know, despite how it may seem, I do like to try to keep the topics of videos relatively cohesive, you know. So maybe we'll table that discussion, the rest of that discussion, because believe it or not, there's more to say about it. We'll table that discussion for another day. Jintaki says it's the veteran YouTuber skilled to turn a 50-minute video into 2 hours. Yeah, well, like I said, we're not done yet. I will take that as a compliment. I don't know if I see myself as a veteran YouTuber, but you might be right. All right, let's go.
Lose their mind. Yes, I don't doubt it. So man, there's so many interesting ones that we could have done for Wizard, but
So
I decided
just won't
to
do
kinda,
any, just because it's just too hard to pick.
I decided because there's so many interesting ones to literally not say anything about any of them. I think that makes the most sense. For Wizard, I just went with Fireball. I think Fireball is and kind of the line of Firebolt
Straightforward
spells is a nice and iconic one. And so your first mastery point is going to reduce the mana cost of that ability. Now that's important because of the way that the passive buffs towards specific schools of magic work for the wizard. So just to lay it out, and this won't be lost on our testers, but this is kind of a heads up at some upcoming tweaks to the wizard. So right now, every time you cast an ability of a specific school, you gain focus charges in that school based on the kind of ability it is. So if I use a fire bolt, that's going to give me 3 charges of fire focus. If I use a standard fire direct damage, it's going to give me 2 fire charges. If I use a fire instant cast nuke, it's going to give me 1. I can build up a total of 5 focus charges. And once I've built up those 5 focus charges, now every fire spell that I cast beyond that point is going to start stacking a buff related to that school. So the Fury of Flame buff will start to stack. And as you get stacks of Fury of Flame, again, this is using fire spells while I have full fire charge. Each stack of Fury of Flame is going to increase my fire spell damage. It's going to increase my chance to critically hit with fire spells. It's going to increase my spell casting speed, my haste with fire spells. But it's also going to increase the mana cost of fire spells. And that passive buff, that Fury of Flame buff, will stack up to 5 times. And at 5 stacks, you're going to be really putting out the burn, but it's going to be costing a lot of mana with each cast. And so this first mastery point is going to reduce the mana cost, not only for base fire spells, but also, once it's at that state of being at full stacks. The second mastery point is going to increase the burn damage from the dot that the firebolt line applies to the target. It's actually a pretty significant part of the DPS of that ability. And so increasing the burn damage of that dot substantially is a pretty significant buff. And then the final mastery upgrade is actually going to allow the fireball to knock targets down if they're in a off balance state. So it's going to unlock a synergy there for wizards with the firebolt spells to be able to do some additional forms of CC, because knockdown is technically a hard CC if the target is in an off balance state.
Awesome. Can we give a quick bean? The chat asked.
No.
No? All right. I'll just put it out there. Then you can tell them no. Mana Rohan in chat said, wait a second. Did you just say critically hit?
Yeah. Spell crit sort of thing.
Yep.
Again.
Nice.
again.
Well, that was awesome. I really appreciate you taking us through some of those abilities. I think everybody got a little bit. It's a good thing we kept Wizard in, because that was a really good one. Like, if we didn't have that, good thing we put them back in. So the one thing I want to make sure everyone's aware that Parting the Veil is also very community driven. As always, we really respect our community. All of you have really made it, that passion project we're all a part of here, trying to get this game to launch. You guys all really provide a lot of support, not just in pledges, which you can check out on pantheonmmo.com, but the way that you interact on social media, the way you interact in our Discord, just the communication. It's always really helpful to us, and we're just really appreciative of that. But that's why we sort of created Parting the Veil. It wasn't just to talk about design docs. We want to highlight the community. So if you didn't know, we put out social media across every single one of our social media platforms, and we gather questions for every one of these shows that we do. So just keep an eye on that, because as we do the next show, you can submit your questions and we'll pick as many as we can to answer. So that was a big build up to say we're going to get into our first question here. And this is actually from Wolfians, who's actually in the chat right now. And this actually came up really last minute. And I was like, we need to add this in. This is a good one. So we're going to start with from Discord. Wolfians asked, will mastery be shared between abilities that are higher level versions of itself? And you kind of hinted at like the Bolt series and that. So what's your answer on that one?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. So to give a little bit more insight into this, previously I had mentioned, since the refactoring, that Mastery has been a system that we hadn't brought back online yet. But prior to that refactoring, when Mastery was implemented, at that time we weren't supporting downranking of abilities, and downranking of abilities just means that if I have an ability line with multiple ranks or multiple versions of that ability, I can have as many of them on my bar as I want. That's downranking. So if I want, my rank 1, 2, and 3 heal all on my bar because I just want to have all that access to them, that's downranking. We did not support downranking at that time. That was a decision that I had made that I've since, changed my mind on.
Really?
But so at that time, when you got an upgrade, you actually upgraded the previous rank or form of the ability into the new one permanently. So you didn't have Fireball rank 1 through 5. You had Fireball rank 1, and then that upgraded into rank 2, but that's the only one that you had. There's good things about that. There's not great things about that.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of ranks. And so when I say ranks in Pantheon, you're going to be a little more creative than that.
Different names
as far as like naming goes and things like that. But downranking is back. We do support that, and I think it does feed into the effectiveness of the limited action set system, because it's just that many more decisions that you make about what you want to put on your bar. But in bringing downranking back, we have now the question, I think a logical question of, if I'm assigning points into Arctic Bolt that I get at level 30, what happens to Bolt of Titan Frost? That's my level 50 Cold Bolt. Do I have to also put points into that? Am I having to put points in all these individual abilities? And the answer is no. That spells that are part of a line will inherit the mastery points. All of them will inherit the mastery points that are invested in them. So at level 1, if I start putting points into my lowest level Cold Bolt, then every time I get a new version of that spell, it's going to inherit whatever mastery points I've invested.
That's awesome.
I think that is a good call. It's interesting though. So that means that like the tier 3 mastery upgrade of a low level ability would be the same as the tier 3 upgrade of a high level ability in that same line. So if it's just like, let's basic example, if it's just a straight direct damage ability, then as you level up and you get different versions of that line, then it deals more damage. But like, if it's adding some extra spice, a little extra like effect on it, it's the same effect at like level 5 as it would be at level 50, for example. So it's kind of interesting, but I think that is the right call. I am a fan of downranking by and large. Really, the only downside is that your spell book can get kind of cluttered. Or you need to be constantly buying or pursuing the new versions of a spell, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That gives you things to do. That's a sense of progression. Things that you have to go out into the world and find or buy. That can be satisfying to do. So really the only downside is that it just fills up your spell book, and you have to do kind of like, I think you have bank management, like inventory management. You have spell book management too, with all these spells if you're a particularly spell intensive class. But I think it's a good point with the limited action set, because coming from a healing background myself, it's think it's primarily applicable to healers, but it applies to some other classes as well, where you want to have the option of using a less potent ability for the sake of mana efficiency. Sometimes. So, like when I was playing DDO as a cleric, I would have all sorts of different potencies of healing abilities, because I wanted to be like, I obsessed over being optimally efficient with my mana. And so there could be some situations where you might just want to top off your tank. Maybe he's at like 60% health, 60, 70% health or something. You don't want to smack him with a high power heal that if you know what your class well, you know what your abilities do, you know roughly how many hit points that guy is missing, and you're like, well, if I hit this maximum power heal on him, that's really going to give him way more health than his maximum than he needs. That's mana inefficient, right? Because then you're spending more mana than you need to be to top him off. But if you have some lesser potent versions of that healing ability, then you just you start to get a feel for it. You know exactly how much he needs, and you're like, all right, I've got to heal for that amount, and you're only spending that amount of mana for that lesser potency. So that is actually really important for healers, for the sake of mana efficiency. And again, it can apply to other classes as well, and it makes for more interesting strategies. That's just kind of just a general rule of game design. You get more options, give more options to the player, give them more tools in the toolbox. That generally makes for more interesting decisions. They can come up with more creative ways to handle problems and things like that. So glad to hear that's back. And glad to hear that spell crits are back too.
Really cool. All right, the next question here, I'm fired up on the screen. So this is from Reddit. This is from Stormfire FX. They ask, what degree of power, this is a tough question to answer, but if anyone can, I think you can. What degree of power can we expect to gain from the mastery system? Are we going to really feel it? Is it pretty impactful?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
it's not impactful at all. It's really lame.
It's going to be pretty impactful. Now, by design, the power is going to vary quite a bit. It's in the sense that a single ability being fully mastered isn't going to dramatically change things to a wild degree, but it's meant to be again an unlocking of your full potential. And so when you have, let's say you've gotten to the point where you've mastered all of your abilities, you've fully upgraded and mastered all of your abilities, absolutely there's going to be a substantial unfolding of not necessarily brute power. Like, you're not going to be all of a sudden one-shotting everything. That it's not that kind of power. Pantheon's all about a broader sense of unfolding. And so what you are, the kind of synergies, the kind of utilities, the kind of decision making and freedom and flexibilities that you're able to bring to any different combat situation is going to dramatically improve, as more and more of your abilities are mastered. Beyond that, yeah, in some cases, power for sure. I mean, a fully upgraded, Mantle of Mist, like we were talking about earlier, or Firebolt with their damage or their healing multipliers that are coming to play through mastery, is definitely going to have an effect on your power. But it's meant to be less about like brute strength and brute power, but more really fleshing out the depths of your class and what you ultimately have the capability to do, the freedoms and the opportunities and the increased decision making and increased synergies and utilities that you're able to provide.
Great answer there. Last question before we jump in. Last question from the community here before we jump into some other things. But This one's actually from our official forums, and it's Counterflush. So they said, will Mastery offer more than one improvement choice per ability? Will it limit other choices? Is there any kind of like branching or tree style, or is it going to be sort of 1, 2, 3 like we had sort of seen way back?
Yeah. So when originally designing the Mastery system, I wanted to stay away from specializations. I drew a lot of inspiration from the alternate advancement system of EverQuest. Also drew a good bit of inspiration from the talent system of the classic WoW era, and I think there's a nice kind of blend of the two a little bit in how our Mastery system is going to work. But what I wanted to avoid was this sense of true specking, where I'm a fire wizard, I'm spec'd, to be an ice wizard, I'm spec'd to be a shock wizard, that kind of thing. And I still feel that way. I still prefer and resonate more with classes being what they are. A cleric is a cleric, and the extent of what clerics are and what they can do is by right of being a cleric, not being this kind of cleric or this kind of cleric or this kind of cleric. However, I do think that there are some opportunities, and this is not this is a little bit of not a we can't talk about it yet, but more of this is something still under consideration. But there's been a few compelling thoughts and ideas put forward about how we can introduce some sense of decision making at certain points in the Mastery system, and whether that's like Minus, I know you've suggested before that that final Mastery point maybe is you've got the linear first one, second one, and then the final one you have maybe a choice of two. I think that's a compelling idea.
Don't tell people also, I have any say in design. I'm gonna get killed. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, having say in design is different than
yeah.
Throwing ideas.
Just I'm just kidding.
But you're good. But then also the idea that at certain points in your Mastery progression that you would unlock, either as part of the general character mastery. Let's say once you've spent 30 Mastery points in your class, then you're presented with an option. You're presented with kind of a separate, choice and option that you have to pick, that, in some ways might determine how things open up from there. And there's a couple more ideas, but I think at the bottom of it all, I want to make sure that the Mastery system reinforces the identity, the kind of that pure identity of the classes, and really feels like a journey in unlocking that full potential. But I do think that there are some potential options as well to create decision points along the way that are meaningful. So more to come on that, but it's certainly in consideration.
Excellent. So let's get back to a base question here. So we've talked a lot about the character abilities and what that's going to look like, and I think that's a pretty juicy topic. And we've talked about it a little bit, but more in depth. We have not talked really almost at all about the other way we can spend Mastery points, and that's really that character-based Mastery point system. Doesn't necessarily tie into class. So I'm going to turn it over to you. This will be the first time we're really detailing this system. So if you could provide some examples, that'd be great. But sort of what types of things that players will be able to invest Mastery points in.
Thank you. I was muted. It was bound to happen eventually. All right. Anyway, I feel like fact checking his statement that this is the first time that they've gone into this character mastery, because I'm not 100% sure that's true. And again, this is what we do here. This is what the watch parties are for. We're gonna check. We're gonna fact check. We're gonna go back, hear what he had to say, because this is what it used to be called. It called the Greater Mastery System, right? Which I don't think is a great term, but it, the idea is that the mastery system applies to your classes, and then the Greater Mastery System is more broad than that. It applies to all characters, right? It's kind of above that, so to speak. So, let's go back, hear what he had to say, and then we can compare it to what they're saying now and see if there's any differences or anything like that. This is from almost exactly 2 years ago, a State of the Game Developer Roundtable.
There's no need to be scared when you have...
With, roundtable with Kilston. Freaking, I should have known. I should have known there was going to be an ad. All right. Here we go.
This is my understanding in this question is that we have the ability mastery, which we've seen and talked quite a bit about. But then we also, I've referenced a general character mastery as well, which is not ability related, but more, developing kind of a broader spectrum of incremental advancements for your character to improve their
This is
aspects.
not
So
a
the question
very
is what
long
categories will be
answer.
Included, and what options do players have
See,
in regards to
he
how
might
they
not
can
go into a
acquire
lot of
mastery
detail.
points. So again, we know mastery is critical to ability development, and have likened it to kind of a blend of the alternate advancement system and a talent type system.
Yep.
Checks out. There's plenty of info out there on how they relate to abilities. As far as it relates to general character development, players will also be able to invest mastery into several incremental improvements for their character. Everything from a bonus to faction gains, increasing stat caps, altering your base movement, swimming, climbing, speed, various non-attribute stat enhancements, and key as far as we don't want mastery to directly increase your strength or your stamina, but mastery that can boost other secondary stat type aspects of your character. So things like your potency or your dodge rating and things like that. And then into things like acclamation bonuses and other various character related. And all these are, again, they're very incremental. They're not meant to be, these massive boosts in power, but they're meant to be part of just slowly and incrementally developing your character more fully.
All right, cool. Pretty straightforward. Sounds fun. But as we know, as we are well aware, development is a very iterative process. That was 2 years ago. And as we've seen already a couple examples in this stream, sometimes they'll have an idea in development where taking away crits, it's an idea, they go with it, they put it into testing. Turns out maybe it's not the best idea after all, and then they change back. That's game design and development in a nutshell. Ideas evolve through testing and things like that. So out of curiosity, let's see if maybe he can provide some more detail, or if any of those details have changed in the past 2 years.
Right. So I would say, first of all, that the class mastery is, the kind of the more principal kind of rock star version of the mastery system, because it's where you're getting into the nuts and bolts and the meat of what you're capable of doing as your class, and that's the primary vehicle with which the game largely is experienced. But yes, the mastery system encompasses also kind of a general sense of mastery that relates to broader aspects of your character, not class in a class related sense. It's also feeds into the crafting and harvesting system as well, where mastery points can be spent there to further advance certain aspects of that sphere as well, which is something I'll let Neff talk about down the road. But as far as general mastery goes, this is one of those places where lots of inspiration from like in EverQuest and things like that, where you've got pretty basic things like what's my base run speed. Like I want to improve my base run speed, so I have the opportunity to invest mastery there. I want to improve my I want to endurance. Endurance is our adventuring resource, where endurance used to be a combat resource. Now it's devoted purely to adventuring, meaning that climbing, swimming, gliding, and sprinting all are governed by endurance. And so general mastery is a means. I haven't seen this video. That base endurance pool. So instead of having 100 endurance at all times, I fully upgrade that mastery aspect of my character, and now I've got 200 as a base pool of endurance, for example. Things like how long you can hold your breath underwater, things like base resistances, like enabling through mastery kind of an increase in those base resistances, and the list goes on. But I think that those examples give and impart kind of a sense of what that general character mastery will allow you to do, which is just kind of filling out and improving and kind of those broader aspects of the character itself.
This is a great one. The chat just has. I'm going to throw out to you. How about fall damage? Can you put mastery so you don't take as much fall damage?
Oh, safe fall. That's actually not a bad idea.
With climbing, that could be a good one.
Maybe. Yeah,
that's great. I love that comment. I feel like I need to give that person a shout out because that's phenomenal. That was I'm going to pronounce. I think
that's just a plain good idea, right? Like I actually safe fall. Yeah, it hasn't been once. Yeah, I remember this moment from the stream in 2017. Safe fall skill. I don't even know that's not even relevant, probably. Could be. I don't know. There's been no mention of it since. Like monks getting like a safe fall ability. Or a skill, I should say. I like that. But also it's like, honestly, it kind of makes sense. Like that doesn't necessarily need to be a monk exclusive thing. Like that could be a thing that applies to everybody, right? Jintaki says Baz growing out his facial hair so he can cosplay drop at the first Pantheon con. I'm not intentionally growing out my facial hair. This is kind of what it's been at for a while. I could grow it out though. I would need to grow it out quite a bit to reach Joppa level. I would need to get some gray like chalk or paint or something to dye it. I could honestly, people have said we look like each other, which I don't know if I see it, but like if I throw on like a pair of glasses and a beanie, I can pull it off. That'd be awesome.
Next question from the community here is from our YouTube channel. Gulu Gulu asked,
Jintaki says got the Joppa act down. Right. That is one thing that I do have going for me. I would have to perfect it a little bit, but if there's one thing I've done, it's watch a lot of Joppa video footage. So I think I with a little bit of refinement, I think I could I could nail the mannerisms, right? I've talked to him enough. I think I could get the his little vibes that he's got. He's nothing if not consistent, you know? That you just the like the pause. That's the main thing, right? Like the pause when somebody asks you a question. That's what I would do. That'd be the first thing that I would that I would practice if we were gonna do like a Joppa cosplay contest at a con. Anytime anybody asks you any sort of question, you're like, I'm just taking a moment to gather my thoughts, how I want to say this. Okay. And then, right? Or just like, he's always got this leaning back in the chair. Thinking, got the hand on the... Easy. Piece of cake. Oh yeah, the mug. I have to get the figure out where he got the Breath of the Wild mug from. That would just be the cherry on top. Shiitake says I do the Rohret cosplay if somebody needed to drag me. Oh, this would be awesome. Oh, Joppa is wearing plaid flannel. I have, not even joking, I have that shirt. We're gonna pause. We're gonna pause the stream. I don't have glasses though. God dang it. I don't think I have glasses. I'll be right back. I need earbuds. Dang it, I hate earbuds. I don't know if I have earbuds. We'll have to work on it. We're gonna have to workshop this. I gotta get some earbuds and some glasses. Let's see, when it's mirrored. But oh yeah, since his camera is mirrored because he's using his left hand. Because he's got the wedding ring. So it's like, or maybe just he's got his camera on the other side. There we go. Nailed it. Well, that shirt is a dead ringer. I'm not joking. I told you. I had that shirt. We got the same style. I don't think Joppa lives in the Northeast, but he could easily pass. Next month, we're gonna work on this. All right, enough nonsense. Let's get serious here. Let's get back.
Will different races of the same class have unique mastery?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Sure. Well, like basically, do races have any play on mastery abilities at all?
Oh, no plan for that at this point.
Okay. Next question here is from Reddit again, and this is great because Counterflesh is on here twice, but they did it right. They were on here once for the forums and once for Reddit, so I feel like that's the go around. If you have two good questions, you got to put them on different platforms. So Counterflesh asks, will all mastery upgrades take 1 point, or will there be different costs for the different mastery upgrades?
Gotcha. There will be different costs. So each of the 3 upgrades will require a larger amount of mastery points to unlock, and they have to be invested sequentially. So the first point has to be spent, and then the next unlock, and then finally the third one will be able to be unlocked. But the cost grows. So the first mastery point costs 1 mastery point. The first upgrade costs 1. The second one costs 2, and the third one costs 4. That's actually a nerf in
a recalibration
mastery cost from what it was before, which was the first one was 1, the second one was 4, and the third one was 9. But like I said earlier, these numbers will be tweaked.
So what did he say? Is it 1 before we? Is it 1 then 2 then 4? Is that how it goes?
It was 1. The second one was 4, and the cost 4 point locked. But the cost grows. So the first mastery point costs 1 mastery point. The first upgrade costs 1. The second one costs 2, and the third one costs 4.
1, 2, 4. Okay. That's cool.
That's actually
that seems more reasonable.
A nerf in mastery cost from what it was before, which was the first one was 1, the second one was 4, and the third one was 9. But like I said earlier, these numbers will be tweaked probably a few more times before we would say it's completely locked in, because it's an interesting balance where we don't want to necessarily end up in a situation like EverQuest did eventually, where you have this alternate advancement system and literally thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of alternate advancement points.
Like he's got them rolled up. I missed that.
Especially as a new character kind of thing, to get to the point where you're able to be competitive. So there's a recognition that we want players to want to make alts and want to play different characters, and so we don't want the grind of mastery. When you break it down, we don't want it to be so daunting that it's like, I'd love to make an alt, but man. So that's one reason for the ability line decision by nesting mastery upgrades into the full line. But it also will play a role in how much the upgrades cost.
Excellent. That's an interesting thing you just brought up there. The next question I had for you was, what about resetting mastery? Is this going to be an option for players, like with a cost, or what's the option there?
Yes, you will be able to reset your mastery investment. It will cost money. It will cost in-game money, and that cost will be
everybody.
Whoa, that would have been
cost money. Everyone just got.
It'll cost gold. It'll cost. It'll cost pixels.
There you go.
That would have been a bomb.
But that cost will grow. That cost will grow each time that you do it, and so it's not something to do frivolously. In testing, though, the good news is for the testing environment, mastery resets will be free. There's actually a command. We'll probably incorporate it into the interface at some point, but as early as the next session, there'll be a command that will allow you to reset your mastery points, so we can get a lot of good testing in and try out different combinations.
That's incredible. That's really exciting.
Oh, exciting.
Okay, couple more questions here from the community. This next one is from our official forums from Fury Wrath. They said, and you kind of answered this, but let's just get specific. Plus, they asked the question, and I made the graphic, so we have to ask it. At what level is the earliest that we'll begin earning mastery?
You'll start earning mastery experience at level 1. So as soon as you kill the first thing, as soon as you complete the first quest, whatever happens first, you will start gaining mastery experience. So it'll be a companion system with you from level 1 and beyond.
Awesome. Next question here. This is our last community question. This is from Twitter. Mr. Cottleshire says, will you eventually be able to spend mastery in everything, not including maybe crafting things that you didn't select to be to take.
Yes, the intention behind the system, again, going back to that theme of unlocking your full potential and ultimately realizing your full potential, has always been about eventually fully achieving that state. So yes, eventually, with enough time, you'll be able to master everything. The exception to that being, again, the potential for creating some opportunities for some decision making and things like that along the way. But fundamentally, yes.
Excellent. Then last question from me, and you sort of answered this, but let's just wrap up with it before we get into final thoughts. So my question for you was, when did you expect Mastery to be back into the testing sessions for our testers? But you've sort of talked about that with this upcoming test, we do expect it to be in there.
Mm-hmm. I don't just expect it; it's in.
Cool.
Now, the expectation setting is more, it's not going to be that every class has their full, mastery upgrade path for every single ability ready to go, by the next test. But my goal is to make sure that as many abilities as we can get in would have their mastery paths available, so that by next session, testers will be able to start digging in.
That's awesome. So, Chris, we covered a lot. Chat, awesome. It seems like everybody's pretty excited. This is a topic that I know you are really passionate about, and myself as well. Before we wrap up tonight, is there anything that we just really haven't talked about, or just any final sentiment or statements you'd like to make about the mastery system?
No, I believe it's a very important system for Pantheon. I'm excited to see it in, because I think it's going to just be another layer of unlocking, how we're really committed to and pursuing a depth of character progression, and so it's something that I'm personally really excited about. That I personally have been eager to get back in action. So, I don't have any final thoughts. I'm curious what kind of questions and discussions maybe this session will spark. I hope everything was relatively clear. But I felt pretty solid.
Awesome. Well, as always, thank you for joining us in the community and answering some community questions here tonight on Parting the Veil. We'll see everybody again next month, and we will have our producer's letter coming out next week. So make sure to check back on pantheonmmo.com for that. Other than that, everybody, have a wonderful night. And Japa, once again, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Onward and upward.
All right. Well, there you have it. Mastery system. I like that system a lot. I do. I'm excited. To do some testing on it. Especially, it's like when you get those in testing, you get those free resets, so you can just like spend a bunch of points and all the different things, and then we just like try it out and be like, nah, I don't know about this, and then you just reset them and you can reassign them all. It's like testing can be fun. For sure. I think it's a pretty solid system. And the fact that there's a potential for me being able to stream some of that in the near future, pretty cool. There's something like it's something just so satisfying about getting those points and having all these choices that like where you can assign them, and popping them in where you want to go, and that being a legitimate way to progress your character. Like I really think that is one of the strongest points of this system that I kind of touched on earlier. And actually makes me, now that I think about it, makes me even more glad that the methods of acquiring mastery points are what they are, and that it's not just based on straight experience, but instead like events, like more event-based acquisition of mastery points, because that is something that it's more just kind of like an individual journey that you're on, and obviously can be done with a group, but doesn't necessarily have to be done with a group. And the more systems that Pantheon has for people that maybe don't have a whole like long block of time to play, or at least not always. Maybe everybody's got some days where it's like maybe you just want to play for like half an hour before work or whatever. Having some flexibility as different systems and such, with different time commitments, and having mastery as something that is maybe like a lower time commitment, I think is really, really strong, because there's something to be said for being able to log in and in a relatively short period of time be able to get a mastery point or two, and being able to upgrade an ability once or even twice, and have that be quantifiable, like have that satisfying moment of confirming your mastery point allocation for that ability, and knowing that you just made your character a little bit stronger. Right? You can say that for sure. It may not be a lot, but it doesn't need to be a lot. You just get that little incremental upgrade, and even after just playing for a half an hour, let's say, you could log off and be like, yep, my character is a little bit better than when I logged on. Right? Like that right there, that ties back into what we were talking about earlier. That is the progression. That is the loop that Joppa was talking about earlier, where if they can do that well, those are the sorts of things. It's an example of just one of many things that can keep people coming back day after day after day. You get that little sweet little hit of dopamine, because you're like, I did something, made my character, I know for sure without a doubt, made my character just a little bit more powerful. And next time I log on, I can do something similar and make my character a little bit more powerful again. And you just keep working away at it day after day after day. That's what keeps people coming back for a long time, right? And I think that is one of the best parts of this system, in my opinion. So yeah. Cool. Next week, I have the newsletter coming out. I'll have that up on the Library Pantheon, of course. Although keep in mind, I think this is the first month where they have been kind of taking the individual articles of the news of the newsletter and spreading it out across the month. So expect this newsletter to maybe not have as much content, because articles have been released sporadically throughout this month. Like the community spotlight with Drac was out earlier this month. They had like the pre-alpha recap was out earlier this month. So it's going to be more focused on like the producer's letter side of things next week when that comes out. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, we'll just keep trudging onward on this journey. And again, I am glad to have you all with me on this journey. You are what make it a lot of fun. We had a lot of silly fun in this watch party, but that's what we do. That's what makes it enjoyable. So thank you for coming along the ride. I am sorry that we did not reach the fabled 4-hour mark. That is an epic quest that we'll have to grind away at another day, right? That's how I keep you coming back. That's week after week. It's that it's the prestige of that accomplishment chasing after that. We're gonna have to keep trying. It's not quite. This is the closest, I think. This might be the closest we've ever gotten. Is this the longest watch party to date? I don't remember. It's up there though. We crested 3 hours. that alone is pretty epic. Good job, team. Good job distracting me. And was it you, Jintaki, or was it Chayanu? One of you wanted extra points for getting me up out of my seat. Yeah, Jintaki, do I win anything for getting him so off topic that he got out of his chair? Yes, I think you do. I think you do. One day I'll be able to tell my kids that I was here when the Fabled 4-hour stream happened. Yeah, that day will go down in history. Mark your calendars. Someday we will get there. I don't know what it's going to take. It's going to take a team effort, that's for sure. Gang up against the big boss. All right. Thank you all. And by the way, while all this was happening, I shadow dropped the highlight video on my YouTube channel, recapping all of the best moments, kind of condensing the stream into a much shorter amount of time. So go ahead and head on over to YouTube and watch that, why don't you? So I will see you all next time. The next time we regroup for a watch party or a Pantheon gameplay stream. Please be safe, be kind to each other, and as always, you know how it goes. Remember, stay curious and adventure on.